Dr. Shawn Wilson is joining us from Baton Rouge, I guess. He's the Secretary of the Department of Transportation and Development. I know my letters. Dr. Shawn, good morning.
Thank you.
I got a couple of texts day before yesterday saying that the Lieutenant Governor's office, who's in charge of the State Historic Preservation arm, may be holding up the Innercity connector. Contacted him. He said, "No, it's not a." Who's holding this up, if anybody, at this point?
Well, I don't think anybody's holding up the project. I mean, there is a massive environmental process that's federal law that dictates how we do this to make sure that we're sensitive to everyone's rights and fairnesses, and that we do what's in the best interest of the public. And that's the process we're in. To my knowledge, we've not received a final draft of the document that's necessary to be processed that goes to a number of agencies, not just SHPO, which is in the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, but there are other agencies as well that have to sign on to that document to say that we have checked those boxes and done our due diligence.
Who's got that document now? Who's got that document now? Where is it?
That document is being developed, if I'm not mistaken. It's an NLCOG document, which is the Council of Governments, who's the sponsoring agency of this particular project. They're managing the contract and the consultant that is developing this, and they're the ones who are going to submit that document, and it goes through a vetting process. And part of that vetting process is then SHPO or the Department of Interior for Natural Resources, just a number of stages that we have to go. And we do this for every project that has the type of impact as something proposed as the Innercity connector.
The Lieutenant Governor sent me a statement yesterday after I spoke with him, said that he believed it was now in the hands of the Federal Highway Administration. Kent Rogers with NLCOG seemed to believe that it was already in the hands of SHPO. So I'm like, folks are pointing at each other, and I'm confused.
Well, I did my homework, and I don't know that Kent said that it was in SHPO or that it was completed, because we haven't gotten the final draft yet, which is the step that needs to go to them. And so when it's in FHWA, they are the principal agency because this is a federal highway. But to my knowledge, I've not seen a final document come across my desk as of yet, which would be the gateway to get to those other agencies. So until it comes
you would get
us,
it to SHPO.
We would submit that to SHPO, the Federal Highways, through our National Environmental Protection Act responsibility. So we have not gotten that document.
Okay. Let's shift gears to the funding portion of this, because I know that is another maze. Federal government's broke. Louisiana broke. Funding for this Innercity connector. What's the price tag for that little stretch of highway just by itself?
My understanding in today's dollars, it's slightly above $700 to $800 million, somewhere in that range. And doing your formula that the federal government's broke and the state government's broke, how do you propose we pay for that? Huge question. If you do the math, if the citizens do the math, it's not something that we're going to have in the immediate future to do that. And the question is, what are some other obligations and responsibilities that will be competing for those dollars if they were real dollars there to deliver this project? And that's one of the most important things that we do is I cannot sign on to a document if I don't have a plan to fund it. That's a very important part. When you get above $300 million, I believe, I have to demonstrate to the federal government how I'm going to pay for it before I can complete that document. And so the question is, if this is a $700-800 million document or project, how am I going to fund it to be able to put things in motion to deliver this project?
How much in limbo is this project, Shawn?
Well, limbo is a big word. There are issues, and the project itself determines the outcome. And so not being the owner of that contract, I'm very familiar with it. We've talked about it. If it's ever built, it'll be an interstate, and it would fall under our responsibilities and under our standards that we administer for the feds. I can't tell you that it's in jeopardy or limbo, except for when they ask me how am I going to pay for it, I turn around and say, and I've said this to Kent and I've said this to others, I get that it's important. That was paid for primarily with earmarks and borrowed money and really unique funding opportunities that no longer exist, perhaps. And so I see things like I-20, which is the original pavement that Eisenhower built, that needs to be repaired. I would feel like I have failed the people of Louisiana if I build new, shiny infrastructure and have to close 20 because of its condition. And this is an issue not just unique to Northwest Louisiana. I have this in Baton Rouge. I have this in Lafayette. We have this all over the state where infrastructure is built to live 50 to 75 years, and guess what? It's 50 to 75 years old.
Are you? Let me compare apples and maybe it's oranges I'm comparing with, because I'm hearing a lot more talk about a new Mississippi River Bridge in Baton Rouge, that may be a higher priority than our inner city connector. I know that's apples and oranges for you, but you're not going to have the money for that new bridge either, correct?
Oh, absolutely correct. But I will tell you that we have a major congestion issue for about 4.5 miles of footprint that's internationally significant, that helps drive petrochemical industry as well as freight from California to Miami coming through that corridor, that if it went some other place, we lose business opportunity. We lose jobs that have an effect on the state of Louisiana. And so when you talk about a new bridge, it's absolutely critical. And when I put that new bridge in front of Shreveport, I can't tell you that it'll be in front, but I will tell you that Shreveport has tremendous capacity built in the 220 loop. When other places are in a much more choked condition, I never try to pit one project against the other, because I have another new bridge in Lake Charles. That bridge in Lake Charles is equally critical to the bridge down south because it's an internationally significant corridor. When you've got the lanes and the capacity that you're going to have, and by the way, we're going to be opening the 220 to north of I-49 in October, you have a tremendous amount of footprint. And the question that we'll ask is, what savings, what efficiency do you get by going from 220 I-49, from 20 to I-49 to 220? What is the value of time and effort and resources of that segment compared to the value of time and effort and resources needed for other projects? In addition, you have to think about how are we going to pay for it. There are many other public-private partnership entities who are internationally involved have come to us to say, listen, we want to build a new bridge in Lake Charles. We want to build a new bridge in Baton Rouge. We've not had anyone in that private sector who's going to put money up and take risks to say, I want to build an inner-city connector. And so it's a numbers game, and it's not to say this isn't important. It's not to say it's not critical for that community, but it's also our responsibility to do our due diligence, as we do in our private lives, to make sure we're doing the best thing possible for the state with resources. And those are some of the issues that we face with infrastructure.
Would a higher gas tax help solve this problem with the inner-city connector?
I will tell you, a higher gas tax, the one we proposed, would do a number of things, including building new capacity. But remember, I've got $14 billion of things I have to do today on the system as it's built, and I've got $15 billion of projects that are on the wish list. This project is competing on that wish list of projects. So my first priority is that $14 billion. My second priority is that $15 billion. And in that $15 billion, folks are going to ask, how much have we spent? And we get this question, and it's not a good one to say on your radio, but I'll be frank with you. We get this question. We spent $800 million on 49 North over the last 12 to 15 years. We're spending about $90 million on Barksdale this year, breaking ground next year, which is an unbelievably fast project. And folks are going to say, how much have you spent in Lafayette? How much have you spent in Baton Rouge? How much have you spent in Lake Charles? And so when you think about a state of Louisiana, folks tend to think about how are we equitably distributing funds in these regions. And more importantly, we're still a very rural state. The rural communities suffer as well. How are we taking care of our asphalt roads? We've got roads that hadn't been overlaid in 15 or 20, 30 years in some cases. That's where the wood, the cotton, the soybean, the corn, all of that wonderful stuff that goes to the port of Caddo-Bossier, it comes out of those rural areas. And if I can't take care of the roads and the bridges to get the wood from the field, it never makes it to the port. You lose jobs, you lose value, and all of a sudden that wonderful interstate we built doesn't have the capacity or traffic that it needs. And so we have to think in a very comprehensive way about how we build infrastructure and how does it all fit with our economy and our lives, whether it's walkable communities, you name it, it all has to fit together. There's not one component that is going to outshine. It's always a trade-off in this business.
You bet. DOTD Secretary, Dr. Shawn Wilson. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and tell Robert I said hello.
We'll do it.